they're going to see in the game. And again, you're doing it within 6 to 8 minutes. It's just a matter of deciding this is what we're going to do because this is what's going to be best for our athletes.
Mark, welcome to the Strong Female Athlete podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be here. My second time. It's awesome.
Yeah, your last episode got a lot of traction and people loved what you had to say about your use of GPS systems and just kind of the data that you've gotten from your field-based teams and a lot of soccer teams and how a lot of them are missing the speed bucket. And today we're really going to focus in on how coaches or parents can even have their athletes include speed as warm up before their team practices, and how I don't really want to say easy because speed takes a lot of consistency to execute, but I think it's easy in the sense that it is simple to do and it doesn't have to be this wild speed session that a coach does. So it can be very straightforward and very easy to implement. So I guess that would be my first question. Like, how hard is it to improve speed, or does it not take too much?
I think it's pretty simple, to be honest with you. Especially with a population of athletes that hasn't really trained much. I was just out in Nebraska at that Nebraska Strength Coaches, and it was more of a change of direction drill that we improved, but we took those 5 athletes that were all multi-sport and did that roll 90 test with them. And we dropped each of their times in that little test there by 4/10, with just 4 reps to drop 4/10. And, linear speed isn't that much more difficult than that. It's especially with a population of athletes that spend a lot of their time jogging, because just teaching them to get that shin angle down, just teaching them how to use their forefoot and how to strike the ground with horizontal force is going to create instant impact. So I think really it's not easy, but it's simple, but you said it consistently, just, get that shin down, push, get some horizontal force in the ground, explaining to them that, you don't always take off that way in soccer, but to train your body to be able to do those things is going to be beneficial, for winning situations.
I think you make a good point that field-based athletes just don't get that speed stimulus enough. And one common thing I see with them is they just don't have very good front side mechanics because they're so trained with the jogging that they can't get their knee and foot out in front, kind of like Tony Holler says, get big in the front. And then they're very long in the back and not short in the back. So they don't have that fast wheel movement with their mechanics. And it's funny because I noticed it this weekend when I was running against all these girls who had done track their whole lives. And I looked at the footage and I'm like, wow, I look like such a soccer player out there. And some of them were like literally like 2 strides ahead of me just because of those front side mechanics. And it's something that does require so much consistency. And the fact that field-based athletes are not even getting the bare minimum of a speed stimulus is what concerns me the most.
Yeah. I think, even in sports that you would think understand sprinting and speed, like American football, there's still a large population of people that are not training speed. They're either not doing anything along those lines, or they're training with intervals that are just slowing their athletes down so much that they're no longer training those things. Um, but particularly in soccer, my daughter was a pretty good soccer player, not your level and ECNL level, but she was a pretty good soccer player in high school. And um, I worked with a couple of her teams a little bit, and I would tell them like, we're trying to get rid of that's those soccer hands when we're running, like like just kind of like swimming, like soccer hands. Yeah, like they're running and their hands are just. You see that a lot in cross country runners too. They're just everything's vertical, and they're just trying to get like. I guess I'm not a. I know zero about cross country running, but I think they're just trying to get some kind of rhythm or something with their hands, and they're not understanding force and angles and the joint angles that create horizontal force, and things like that. So even a little bit of education is going to be impactful. It seems like a no-brainer to you and I, but it's been interesting to try to get those things across to coaches and parents.
I think it'll be good to just give a rundown of what a sample speed warm up could look like. And it really breaks my heart when I hear some of the girls I work with in Tampa, and I'm sure some of your athletes have said the same, but their warm up at practice is maybe like a couple laps around the field, or
Mm.
I've heard Indian runs as well. And again, it's just training that slow twitch, that slow jogging pattern, those mechanics where the knee's not driving up and it's terrible for improving sprinting form. So I think in place of that, coaches would be better off doing speed as warm up, not just to get their athletes faster, but it also helps as injury reduction, which we can also get into because of that hamstring activation and just exposing them to those higher velocity movements that they'll get in a game.
Yeah, I think you know so much warm up. And I think I probably told you that story about my daughter's coach that asked me if I would heard what I did and asked me if I would do a warm up, and then she came over to me 2 or 3 days into it and said, "Hey, coach, I don't want you to coach him through the warm up. I just want him to get warmed up." And I said, "Well, then you can do it. Like if you don't need coaching, then you can do it." And I kind of stepped back because that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to coach them a little bit to be faster, and she just wanted them to check the box. And my thought on it is, and I say this to the football guys that I work with now and always doing our warm ups, you know, we're here for 10 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever we have for our warm up. And it doesn't need to be extensive. At Metrolina, we were done in 6 to 8 minutes every single day. I say, we're going to be here anyway, right? So let's just don't waste these reps. Like, why are you wasting 10 minutes of practice time to just run in circles or do something that's like the goal of it is get their body temperature up, get all those things will happen, you know, in a sprint based warm up. But in addition, now you're actually helping them to be better at their sport because no matter what, if you're faster and you can control that speed when it needs to be controlled, and you understand all of these things that it takes, you talked about you were running, you know, in the track meet this weekend, a national event, and there was girls there that or women there that were, been running track all their life. I would venture to say that if you had to change direction in the middle of that 60, you probably win the gold. You know what I'm saying? If you had to, because you would understand explode, cruise, change direction, re-explode. Why are we not practicing those things in those first 10 minutes, and we're just running in circles or doing jumping jacks or like that is a frustrating thing for me. Like you've got to be there anyway. What can we do to help take these 10 minutes and not just make it, well, we check the box? We checked it. Now we're warmed up. Well, let's explode. Let's learn speed. Let's do some drills. And it doesn't have to be track drills, a little bit of track drills, but I'm not I used to be like, here's my list of track and field drills when I first, before I met Tony Villani and Matt Gates particularly. And, those can be extensive. Let's figure out what things our athletes lack by watching them move, watching them sprint, and then build those into the warm up. If it just, to me and to you, it makes sense. But I think it's probably a combination of I don't know what I don't know, and a little bit, and this is probably going to sound really terrible, of laziness. I know I said this on the first podcast, but I'm a bit of a warm-up snob. So when I was selecting a club for my daughter when she was 12 or 13, when we first decided to look for a club, we went to several different tryouts, and I watched the coaches warm up. And I had told myself going in, if there's a coach that's going to warm them up and says, all right, girls, my more experienced girls are going to lead this warm up, and I'm going to stand over here and look at my phone, or I don't want her on that team, because those coaches are lazy, or they just don't understand that they're wasting time. The club we found, the first thing I noticed was the coach coached the warm-ups. And it wasn't necessarily speed-based, but he was coaching them. And that's why we chose that club. So I think those factors kind of weigh into those things.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a combination of maybe just a lack of education or laziness, or like you said, checking a box and just kind of using those 10 minutes with some like filler exercises. Like, okay, everyone, just get the heart rate up, get the body warm. That's really all you need. But some coaches aren't really thinking about, okay, what is the most bang for buck thing we can do in this 8 to 10 minutes? And I know it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it really is,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing speed in that 8 to 10 minute warm up twice a week. Oh my gosh, the gains you can make over many
Mm-hmm.
months, many years, especially if you're coaching these girls through the age groups and their whole development pathway. Oh my goodness, you can make some serious gains. And another thing, just beyond the speed aspect, is the mental aspect. Athletes love running fast and racing and doing these stimulating fast twitch movements.
Mm-hmm.
Every girl I've talked to who says, "Oh, my coach makes us run laps around the field. Oh, we have to do Indian runs before practice." They all hate it. They're miserable. They don't look forward to it.
I think that is something that's just hanging around from a previous generation, that we just have to do these miserable things, and I don't want to learn any new way. You can literally spend 2 days a week working, linear speed with just a couple of full speed sprints at the end of your warm up and be done in 8 minutes. The other 2 days a week, let's work on lateral movement in our warm up and deceleration. So let's take off and then stop. What's the number one issue with female soccer players from an injury standpoint? Why are they walking around in knee braces all the time? Something, it's, I would venture to say, and again, this is completely anecdotal, we're not teaching them to explode in practice, stop and re-explode, and stop and re-explode, because they're jogging through it. When you're jogging through it, you're getting your body used to those speeds and those forces, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're out on the field doing it, and it's at game speeds, which you can recreate. You make it, you just listen. We're taking off. We're going to race each other at the end of this warm up, and I want everybody to stop in an athletic position as fast as they can when we hit this and just start introducing that and then coaching them a little bit. And now you're able to expose those athletes to those forces and those stimuluses that they're going to see in the game. And again, you're doing it within 6 to 8 minutes, and it's just a matter of deciding this is what we're going to do because this is what's going to be best for our athletes. It might not be best for the coach as far as, well, I've got to set up my drills, or I use this time to put my cones down, or whatever. Because you can't, if you're going to do it the correct way, in my opinion, you can't not be part of it as a coach. Because as soon as the coach steps away, and I had this conversation with our head coach at Metrolina football, I said, listen, here's our problem with the guys would not just do the warm up correctly. We'd always be telling them, hey, I said, look around, coach. When we're warming up, what are the other coaches doing? They're on their phone. They're joking around with each other. So the players are looking at them saying, well, if this isn't important to them, this isn't important. So if I was a head soccer coach, and I am not I had to have somebody explain offside to me very early on. Soccer was just not something I knew much about, but I know about the demands of it because it's easy just going to watch the sport. If the coach leads that with intensity and leads it like, listen, we're talking girls here. So people like, all right, girls, listen, here's the deal. This is the most important 10 minutes of today because we got to get you warmed up for what we're about to do. But we're going to use these 10 minutes to work on things that are going to make you better at soccer. And if you take these things seriously, I promise you, you will be better at soccer. And this is how we're going to do it. Let's go. You know what the girls are going to do? They're going to line up and they're going to attack it. That was one I've always have said this. You have to twist guys' arms to get them to do stuff. And beat them over the head because they've got that thick-headedness, that ego. As soon as the female athlete, for the most part, understands, all right, this is going to make me better, and they're doing this because they care about my performance, that ego testosterone thing isn't there to have to fight through it. So you're going to get instant reaction from them, and they're going to kill it. And they're going to love it, like you said, because it's going to go fast. They're going to be laughing. It's going to be fun. And then, hey, let's go play soccer. You've got everything done. I think if coaches would just embrace that and parents would embrace that idea that when you play soccer, it's just, and you know this, as at a high level or anything, basketball at a high level, preparation sometimes, especially in the club aspect of it, the preparation takes a secondary role. We could go spend 20 minutes lifting weights or whatever, preparing, or we could be out on the field playing soccer for 20 minutes. Well, a lot of parents are going to say, we need to be out there doing ball drills or whatever. Well, here's your time, coach. You got 10, 12 minutes. Let's build this in. What are we lacking? Let's build this in. And as long as the coach is attacking that and thinking this is important, ladies, this is important, it will become important to them and they will attack it. And that's going to be better for everybody. That's going to be better for everybody. I firmly believe if that was the case in every single situation, you'd see a lot less athletes walking around in knee braces. You just would, because I think, you're talking 10 minutes a day, 4 days a week. That's 40 minutes a week that you could spend preparing them for what's going to take place in the actual sport, as opposed to just getting their heart rate up. There's no way that's not going to be impactful. You just have to make it important, and it starts with the coach.
I've talked to a lot of colleagues about this, and they have all come to the conclusion, and so have I, is that team coaches of these girls almost have more of an influence on injury risk than the strength coach, because the team coach sees these girls more hours than
Mm-hmm.
we do. And
Sure.
I think that's why the warm up is so key when coaches are thinking about it, because, like you said, if that warm up's not exposing them to these higher velocity movements that are happening in the game, then yes, you're going to see maybe overuse injuries or like knee braces, or worse yet, ACL. And it's just not helping them prepare properly for game day. And I think coaches really influence that, and they think that the strength coach is going to take care of all that. But if an athlete is coming to a strength coach and she's doing all the right things with them, strength training, working on jumps, hops, deceleration with the strength coach, but then she goes to the practice and it's jog, 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 do Indian runs, it kind of like negates what's going on with the strength coach if they're doing that nonsense. So that's why it's important to talk about this, how we all can contribute to the health and performance of the female athlete.
For sure. I think, and I don't know if it's still this way, but the Eastern European model was the sport coach is also a strength coach in a way, that they're involved in every aspect of it. And, you know, the Western model, it kind of, my job is to win. So I'm going to coach the sport and worry about this other stuff, later, or let somebody else worry about it. But when it comes right down to it, the sport coach is going to be with all of the athletes, because if you've got 15 girls on the team, how many of those 15 are always going to show up for that extra strength conditioning session that they're supposed to go to, at this time or at that time? You know, they may be consistent, they may not be, but the sport coach is always going to have that opportunity. Just think if, jump into the end of practice now. So they spend 10 minutes doing some conditioning at the end. Imagine if once a week or twice a week they said, all right, we're going to do various isometric holds, for a minute. We're going to do isometric split squat, nice wide joint angle, float that heel straight up and down. And we're going to start at a minute for each leg. And then we're going to get into a push-up position and we're going to bend our elbows and we're going to hold that for a minute. Just spend 5 minutes doing isometric holds. And then if you want to run back and forth and do your 5 minutes of condition, that's fine. Imagine if a coach would say, we're going to spend 10 minutes warming up and it's going to be speed-based. We're going to hit a sprint or two at the end. The next day, it's going to be, like we talk, linear-based. We're going to work in some decelerations. And at the end of practice, a couple days a week, we're going to spend 5 minutes doing isometric holds. What that would do for the girls, I mean, it's low-hanging fruit, because football and the majority of the athletes I'm working with at this moment, just the way the circumstances are set up, is football. But football is easy because whether they lift weights with you or whether they lift weights, they're going to lift weights because it's just what they're going to do. So there's not a big advantage in football. Everybody, if you're lifting weights in football, congratulations. You and every other team in the world, all that's doing is keeping you at the average. Like, who cares? We lift, we lift, we lift. Congratulations. I don't even post, every once in a while, I'll post a lifting video of our guys just because they like it. But who's not doing that? Everybody is. Now, jump to girls soccer. You want to talk about a relative advantage? Imagine just those things, 40 minutes on your speed warm-up with a couple sprints and your decels. That's 40 minutes a week. And then 10 minutes a week spent on isometric holds. So you're talking 1 hour a week. That is, you want to talk about 1% better than the other team. I mean, that's multiple layers of better than most people are doing, because it's just not the norm. That's the low-hanging fruit for most female sports, is speed and just a little bit of strength training. That's the lowest hanging fruit possible. you can differentiate yourself, you know, so much by just doing that. You know, I'll go back to my daughter a lot, but she loved to lift and loved to sprint. And is she a naturally born great athlete? No, she's a good athlete. But the fact that she could just run people over, like I tried to get her to play rugby because at one point I said to her, those things that you're getting that red card for, they encourage that in rugby. And she's like, no, because she just had that advantage of she ran sprints a lot and she loved to lift weights. And her teammates were these little tiny, get all these girls doing that. They don't have to be big. My daughter's a pretty big person because of, she's got genetics for it. You're not going to get any better return on your investment as a female athlete than those 60 minutes. And the coach can have it happen. I'm just flabbergasted that that's not something that soccer coaches aren't calling you about, saying, what do you think about this? As an expert in both sides of it. I mean, that should be the norm. That should be the norm. That's 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. And you would set your team apart. We go back to, we were talking before we were recording about my buddy Ernest in Charlotte. Those girls that are coming to him are playing at the highest level, and that's why he's went from 5 ECNL girls to 40 that he's training, because they started to go back, and they don't even do a whole lot of traditional lifting, the isometrics, speed training. They have a shred mill. They go back, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you so powerful? And they're like, we go to Coach Ernest twice a week for an hour. So next thing you know, here they come, here they come, here they come, And then despite that, we're still out there trying to get coaches to set these things up. And they're saying, and this is probably going to offend some people too, but they're saying, well, we have a contract with this group or with that group, and we have a strength coach that, then why are they still injured and slow?
Yeah.
Like if you've got this wonderful strength conditioning group that you're paying to come out and train your club, then what's the problem? Why are they having to go to Coach Ernest to stay healthy? Because he's doing the right things. He's doing the right things. And it's just that I'm gonna step off my stool right now and get down off my, where I'm up here preaching, but it's frustrating because it's literally that easy, and
Well,
we just have to grasp it and run with it.
Yeah, it's easy in the sense that the concepts are simple. So what
Yes.
you have to do in training is simple: jump, hop, bound, lift, sprint, really just the basics. But again, the consistency required to
Mm-hmm.
make those big gains is the hard part for a lot of people. And I don't know if it's a schedule problem or an overscheduling problem with other sports or skills trainings, or people just don't want speed enough. But it's crazy because speed is the number one thing people ask me to train. And so it is important to a lot of people. So I'm just wondering, is it a priority for them, or do they think speed comes quickly? I mean, it's just crazy the amount of consistency it takes, and it's a long-term pursuit. It's a pursuit that athletes should do for the length of their sports career, from
Mm-hmm.
middle school, high school, all through college. And for the elementary schoolers, the young ones, you should be sprinting, jumping, having fun, gamifying it, of course, and getting a lot of variety, but everyone should be doing it for many years. And yeah, it is simple, but it's hard for people to stick with simple. And the thing I want to say about the lifting, I love that you said even just coaches can incorporate just some body weight stuff, that it's better than doing nothing. And then if girls want to do the loading outside of it to just make some more gains in their muscle mass and really change their body comp, because body comp does matter for sprinting.
Mhm.
And I'll say personally, in the past year, I've put on 10 plus pounds of muscle mass alone just training for this track meet. And I became a lot faster and more powerful for myself. But even when I put myself up against some of these long term sprinters, these girls are jacked. They
Yeah.
are robust and they are powerful, and it's insane. So I think it's important that female athletes commit to that lifting outside of
Mhm.
practice if they really want to get that edge.
For sure. I mean, how many schools, I've worked at a couple of different schools where we had classes, and the classes were always uh, male. Like we have football, we have men's basketball, and then we have this one class for random female athletes. And where I was at in North Carolina and South Carolina, when I talked with the principal about, hey, what else can we be doing to help our athletic department? My answer was always, we need to add team oriented strength and conditioning classes during the day. Add another class. Like, why do I remember talking to my principal in South Carolina when he asked that, and I said, "Did you hire me to coach the general pop kids that don't want to be in the weight room, or to be the strength conditioning coach?" And he said, "Strength conditioning coach." I said, "Then get these general population kids that don't want to lift over in PE and create a female strength conditioning class for me, so that we can get girls soccer, girls basketball in here, or whoever wants to be in here and train." And the question was always like, well, will the girls want to take the class? My answer was, uh, give me 1 year and wait and see how many girls want to take the class. Because we're going to have fun in here. We're going to train, we're going to have fun. And then 3 or 4 weeks in, all of a sudden they're going to be going, holy smokes, like this is a big deal. You know, the first time I added BBT to a bar for some of our volleyball girls when I was in York, I remember to this day, she's one of my all-time favorite athletes. Her name's Jules. She is through college now, but she eventually played volleyball at Clemson, I believe, or maybe it was club. But anyway, 95 pounds. She would have been happy putting a 25 on each side of that trap bar and doing 100 reps and saying, I lifted. And I couldn't, and I kept telling her, like, you're not, we need to add a little bit. No, I don't want to, I put VBT on the bar. And I said, okay, you're going to lift this. And if it's above zero point 0.5 or zero point 0.6, then we're going to add significant weight on there. She said, I'm telling you. And she lifts it, the 95 pounds, it's like 0.86. I'm like, girl, we're going to add some weight to this. I had another 20. She's like, coach, that's more than I weigh. I'm like, just wait and see. Boom. Within 2 or 3 weeks, she was trap bar deadlifting 275 pounds at 100-pound body weight with excellent technique, because they so many times have not been weight room cultured like the males have. It's just, you know, once you get them in there, the female into the weight room, and you start showing them this is really going to be impactful for you, it's going to keep you healthy. It's going to spread like wildfire. But yet you go to these schools and the football team dominates the weight room and there's no time for the female athlete. Well, whose fault is that? Coach, administrator? Because if I'm the soccer coach and I'm told, yeah, football has a weight room every day after school, so the girls can't lift. Uh, that's not happening. Like, you better find a time. Then you better give me a class because those girls are lifting. I don't want to be told that we can't get in there. It Once you create just a little bit of culture of weight room for the girls, it's gonna take off like wildfire. But it just goes back to the same things we're having happen at soccer practice. It's just not been part of the it's just not been part of the culture. That's gotta change, because if you go, and you know this, you were a college athlete, when all these girls playing soccer, what's their goal? I want to play college athletics. Well, what's the first thing you're going to have to do when you're there? You're going to be
Meet your
involved in the strength and conditioning
meet your
program.
strength coach.
Yeah, like there's the strength coach. This is what we and they're like, oh, okay, well, I haven't like it's infuriating. Like, why have they not been exposed to strength and conditioning since they were in 8th or 9th grade or younger? Like, you don't have to be under the barbell. You know, if I would start, if I had toddlers, I'd be having them jump and run, and and when they were about 7 or 8 years old, I'd teach them how to do a wall sit and make a game out of it, and progress it that way. And the difference when they were 16 years old would be dramatic. It's just a matter of getting people to understand the impact of that. There's nothing they can do that's going to impact their ability to stay healthy more than just add in a little bit of training, and see how you like, and then grow from there. Nothing. You go out there and run around and kick the ball all you want at half speed in a drill. Nothing's going to impact you more than what we do.
I think you're right that a little bit is key because a lot of these girls are practicing
Mm-hmm.
3 to 4 times a week, 1 to 2 games on the weekend, pretty much 9 months out of the year. So just be careful of when you start to add more training. It doesn't need to be this crazy like 2-hour session every time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for the speed, it could be that 8 to 10 minutes, 2 times a week. And then in season strength, would you say 30 to 40 minutes usually is
Yeah. I
standard?
mean,
And when they go off to college, that's what a lot of D1 strength coaches tell me. They don't do more than 30-minute
no.
lifts in season.
It just goes back to what we were saying at the beginning is just a little bit of time. And the sport coach, not everybody has access to a strength and speed coach, but all coaches have access because they can reach out to people. They can talk to people. They can do a little. So it goes back to that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. It can be part of your practice. If I was in charge of a club, I would demand it. I would say if your practice times are 4:30 to 6, I would expect your athletes to be there at 4:15 for their speed training session, and from 6 to 6:15, we're going to do some body weight training, or if you have access to more, and just build it in. I mean, and then just make it. I mean, this is what you have to do if you're going to coach for our club. This is what our expectations are, and just watch what that multiplied by how many of our teams are in that club, at all different levels. Watch what happens. I mean, 1 year, imagine how that would set a club apart. If they have a contract with a strength conditioning, well, bring them out there 15 minutes at the end of practice instead of having to say, hey, on Wednesday at 6, if you don't have practice, we've got a strength conditioning session, or what. I don't know how exactly it works, but build that into their practices and look out.
Now coming back to the speed warm up, so how would that look? What exercises are you doing? Sort of a modified version of Tony Holler's atomic workout, just doing like I think it's like 10 to 15 movements he has in his. What are you
Very
incorporating from
similar.
start to finish?
Very similar. I
Yeah.
really like Tony's atomic warm up. I think it's very efficient. It gets the job done. Sometimes it's just a matter of if you're really short on time, you could do, you know, some A skips, some switches, some pogo hops, and some, short prime time, medium prime time, big full prime times. And now, all right, get that shin down, and push. You could do that in 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. You could do half of the
And
atomic workout.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so you just take anything out of those ideas, anything that just is getting them moving as fast as they can. And, you don't have to sprint 60 yards. You could say, this is kind of like when we set up our program, sometimes we're going to do a 5 and a 10 fly, and sometimes we're going to do a 20 and a 10 fly, So set up your warm up based on that. If we're doing the 5 and the 10, we're working on horizontal force. So our drills are going to be more around horizontal force and hip projection. If we're working our 20 and the 10, well, now we're working more on a little bit of horizontal force because we got that same start, those first 3 steps, but now we need to build in some more vertical shin type drills, switches and things like that that are working on ankle stiffness and things. So, it's not hard, but like you said, if someone wanted to just start with, a cookie cutter program, but although it's extremely bare, you can do whatever you want with it. But, look at Tony's video. He's got a video. He goes through every single one of his drills he does in there. Take that video, watch it, write on a piece of paper, and do it with your athletes. And if it takes too long, cut it in half. And Monday we're going to do the top half, and Tuesday we're going to do the bottom half, or whatever. And then what that's going to lead to is curiosity, because that is what brought all of us to where we're at. Is curiosity of, oh, I like this. How can I get better at this? Brian Kula came to Metrolina. He was up training Christian in Charlotte a couple years ago, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, I got the afternoon. What are you doing?" I told him we were training kids. He said, "Can I come over?" I said, "Yeah." Had him put him through his warm up that he does with the different prime times and there's so many people that have videos, coaches have access. It doesn't have to be soccer specific. I wouldn't even be looking at soccer specific for those 8 to 10 minutes. I would be looking at speed specific, and then get into your soccer specific during soccer practice by how you build out your practice. But it's very, very simple, and it's just a matter of being willing to be open-minded enough to say, all right, I can do something a little bit better. What do we need to do? Instead of like this coach that told me about my daughter, I don't care about them being coached in this period. I want them sweating. Well, then don't waste my time. Anybody can make kids sweat. I'm trying to make them better. So as a coach, are you trying to make them sweat or trying to make them better? Because they will sweat while you're making them better. But you can also make them sweat and not be impacting them at all. And that's why you see them talking and, pulling their knee in and talking about, and they're not putting any force into it. Congratulations, coach. You just wasted everybody's time here.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I like that you do some version of the atomic workout. I love that all the movements in there are extremely explosive. You have to do them at an 11 out of 10 intensity. I mean, again, with this, the intent is very key. You can't be doing those high knees half-assed, excuse my language.
Yep.
You can't be making it look like a really bad jog. It's like one of those things where you have to be so locked in to every single movement to get the benefit out of it. And one question I do get asked a lot before people try the atomic workout or do speed in the warm up, they are concerned about the lack of stretching. And my argument is always, well, young female athletes, it's not that they're not flexible. They're weak and they're not explosive.
Yep.
So we need to make them stronger and we need to make them more explosive. It is rarely a lack of flexibility problem that they're getting injured. They are just straight up weak and not powerful. And usually when people try the speed as warm up without the stretching, they report back to me, "Oh wow, we all were fine the whole season." And I'm like, "Great, like no injuries. Yep, could have told you that, but I just need you to try this first and trust me
Yeah.
here."
Yeah. Stretching before practice, probably. I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it. Like a lot of people are like, oh, You don't want to do that. I think they'll be fine. They're not going to hurt themselves. But I mean, what are we getting out of it? What are you getting out of it? Like stretch at the end, when they're all warmed up and I think that, yeah, I think people are over reliant on that for sure. Like we've got to do all these stretches when we went through 2 years at Metrolina warming up every single day, doing kind of a version of RPR, Dan Fictor's neural warm up, and Tony Holler's atomic warm up, all combined into this 8 to 10 minute thing. Or we're out there doing Isaac, in a split squat, doing Isaac heads and, doing prime times. And then we would go directly into a 20-yard sprint and a 40-yard sprint, you know, and then we'd go to practice. We didn't stretch one thing and we really didn't do, and no one ever got hurt, ever. Like
Yeah.
no one ever ran after that and said, "Oh, I pulled my hamstring." Not one time. We did it every single day.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably overrated a little bit as far as stretching before.
I did RPR, some pogo hops, some fast high knee switches
Mhm.
before my race this weekend. Was totally fine.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
no
I
room
mean,
to really warm up or do
yeah.
dynamic stretching. And I'm like, all right, we're just gonna do the basics here and just get ready for this 8-second race.
And any athlete that ever said anything about that to me, you know what I'd say? Well, you're out here 5 minutes early. Stretch all you want. You know, I mean, if you feel like you need to stretch, get out here about 5 minutes before and stretch away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but then it comes back to the lifting thing. If you're doing strength training consistently, your muscles are less likely to fatigue and feel sore or feel like they need to be stretched. And strength training can be its own quote unquote flexibility training if you're doing it consistently.
100%.
Is there anything else you want to add as we wrap this up, or any final words?
No, I think I've been on my soapbox enough for one day. So
Okay. Yeah, I think this was a good conversation,
yeah,
just something really to consider for coaches and also the parents listening. Really look at what's going on in warm up. Is it really making the athletes better for the game? Is it keeping them resilient to injury? And the last thing I will mention is within the speed warm up, just ensure you're timing those sprints or racing or making it competitive so it does give that 11 out of 10 intensity that we're looking for, and just really pushing everyone to go max effort. So we could probably do a whole episode on data and timing, which we
yeah,
might
we
do
should.
another time. I know you use the free lap, I use the free lap.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been such a great tool. So we'll have to discuss that next time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all on the next episode.